What's up, Puglets? You're here with JD and Austin with a great topic to talk about today. Thanks to the Final Fantasy 15 episode Duskade demo, we got an amazing glimpse at what the summons are going to look like in the upcoming game. I've been a lifelong Final Fantasy fan, and when I was able to watch the Rama summon from Final Fantasy 15, it was one of the greatest and most exciting moments in my long-running Final Fantasy career. And considering the fact that Rama is usually a lower-level summon who isn't as powerful as later ones, the other summons in Final Fantasy 15 are going to be absolutely insane. The Rama summon, it got the Final Fantasy aficionados at Power Up Gaming thinking about summons in general and which ones we think are our favorites, or the coolest ones, or the most powerful ones. And so today we're taking a look at the top 10 Final Fantasy summons. Now, whatever Austin may say, I think Carbuncle is a pretty great summon. The fact that it can cast Reflect on your entire party is pretty useful, though it can put a hinder on your healing unless your White Mage has an ability like Reflect Null. But if your White Mage does, then you're in pretty good shape. And in Final Fantasy IX, Carbuncle is extremely useful due to the fact that it can not only cast Reflect, but also Haste, Vanish, Shell, and Protect as well, all depending on which add-on your summoner is holding. And then in Final Fantasy XIV, Carbuncle ditches the buffing game altogether and goes for all-out damaging attacks. So Carbuncle is my number 10. Leviathan showed up a lot earlier than other summons on this list and first appeared in Final Fantasy II, but you couldn't actually summon it for yourself until Final Fantasy IV. But Leviathan is pretty awesome thanks to his raw power and his brutal tsunami or tidal wave attack. And water magic is not a very common element in the Final Fantasy series. If you find an enemy who is weak to water, Leviathan will easily finish them off and drag them down into the depths of the sea. In Final Fantasy VIII, Leviathan is capable of instantly killing some enemies in addition to dealing damage, similar to Odin. Leviathan is, more or less, the Final Fantasy equivalent of the Kraken, so it is completely appropriate to yell its name and that you have released it every time you summon it.
There comes a point in every small gamer boy's life that he falls in love with his very first summon. Well, maybe that's a select few, but for the ones that do develop emotions for pixels on a screen, Shiva would clearly be the better pick, what with the icy boobs and all. I mean, she can literally cut diamonds with those nips. But for me, it's Ifrit all the way. Having been in most of the Final Fantasy games, one might say Ifrit is the loyal dog of the series. He's never too powerful, but always impresses with a brutal display of power and confidence. The dude floats into the air atop a boulder with arms crossed and then slams said boulder into the ground like a volleyball, crushing our helpless enemies beneath. Needless to say, Ifrit has one hell of a spike, and for that, we're glad he's on our side.
Practicality is the name of the game for Phoenix. He not only looks hardcore, but is also extremely useful. Like Ifrit, Phoenix deals fire damage with his Rebirth Flame or Phoenix Flame attack, but he also revives all KO'd party members, sometimes and in certain games even to full health. In FF8 and 9, after summoning Phoenix just once, he will randomly show up and revive your party members if everyone has been KO'd. Also, those Phoenix Downs that you use all the time, yeah, those come from the Phoenix. So even outside of actually just summoning the Phoenix, his practicality goes way beyond other summons. Unlike Leviathan or Ifrit or other long-running summons, Alexander was a little bit late to the party. He didn't show up as a summon until Final Fantasy VI, but quickly established himself as legendary. He's a giant robot fortress, or something like that, and typically deals out pretty brutal holy elemental damage. In Final Fantasy IX, Alexander isn't available to you as a summonable Eidolon, but he plays a key part in the plot of the game. He's one of the only Eidolons that Kuja is unable to possess and take for himself. And in Final Fantasy XIII, Alexander takes on a lot more humanoid appearance and looks a lot more like an iron giant than a big wall. He's Hope's companion Eidolon and is the only boss in the game that I really had a hard time with, mostly because he's just a beast.
Ready for battle.
Humor, strength, and most importantly, brotherhood. Let's face it, these two Minotaurs have it all, and while they might have only been usable in one Final Fantasy game, Final Fantasy VIII, they did a damn good job of leaving their mark. After all, they're the only summons ballsy enough to play a best 2 out of 3 match of rock, paper, scissors while a slab of earth comes hurtling towards them at alarming speeds. And just when you thought it couldn't get any better, the older, smaller brother lifts a crying younger brother above his head and uses his skull as a battering ram. Slapstick comedy at its finest right there.
Yojimbo is an optional Aeon in Final Fantasy X, but he is absolutely worth every bit of effort and gil to obtain him. He resembles a Japanese shogun warrior, and he's kind of a selfish son of a bee, but when someone is as useful as Yojimbo is, they can afford to be a little bit greedy. He is essentially a mercenary for hire, and once he is summoned, the attacks that he performs depend on how much gil you give him each turn. The pinnacle of his moveset is his Zanmato attack, which will instantly kill almost any enemy in the game, including bosses, with the exception of Sin and Unalesca. And I'm kind of ashamed to admit, but when I reached the end of Final Fantasy X, I was extremely low leveled, and I basically just spent all my gil on paying Yojimbo to instantly take out Braska's final Aeon. But it's the end of the game. You don't need gil at the end of the game, right? Who cares? Knights of the Round is an extremely unique summon. It appears only in Final Fantasy VII, and is not one character, but the 13 Knights of the Round Table, each of which attacks with a different style of weapon or elemental magic. The Knights entirely ignore the target's defense statistics, and are capable of instantly killing nearly every enemy in the game, except for the weapons and safer Sephiroth. At its absolute maximum, Knights of the Round can deal a whopping 129,987 points of damage. Thankfully, Knights of the Round is not compatible with quad magic. The summon takes about a minute and a half to complete, and imagine that 4 times in a row. Unnecessary overkill is what that is. The summon takes even longer than everything I have to say, so I guess just finish watching the summon.
Speaking of knights and unnecessary overkill, the king of one-shot kills leaps into battle on his trusty steed, well, rather as a trusty steed in Final Fantasy XIII to make quick experience of most pesky monsters. Outside of 13, Odin tops that brutality by rending opponents in two with the attack that embodies devastation, Xantasuken. This attack is instant death for most foes unlucky enough to face it. And not only that, but this summon comes at the low cost of 0 gil, so he puts Yojimbo out of a job when it comes to the death-dealing industry. He's the kind of summon that the Mafia hires when someone needs to be taken care of, and that's why we love him. If gamers' love of Charizard has taught us anything, it's that people love having pet dragons. They breathe fire, eat people whole, and give off a general vibe that nothing else in the history of existence matters. Well, if you take Charizard, put a couple of nuclear reactors on him, and change his color scheme to I will decimate your soul black, you have Bahamut. Yeah, no surprises here, but you can't argue with perfection. He's so perfect, in fact, that Square decided to put 3 of them in one game when they made Final Fantasy VII, basically saying to the masses of fans, take 3 of these and call us in the morning. And that's just what Bahamut is, medicine for the hordes of Final Fantasy fans who have the fever. A fever that is so strong it can only be cured with immense amounts of radiation treatment and general amazingness in the form of his signature move, Mega Flare. With the beautiful wings of Phoenix, the power of Odin, and a penchant for the intense arm-crossing pose of Ifrit, Bahamut is the coolest summon we could have ever wished for. But hey, I guess that's what you say when you have an ancient cosmic dragon fighting by your side. Alright guys, that's PowerUpGaming.co.uk's top 10 Final Fantasy summons of all time. Well, in our opinion at least. We'd like to hear your opinions too. Why don't you say something in the comments below. Tell us how wrong we are, it's what you guys like to do. Anyways guys, thanks for watching and take it easy.